For those that don't know, right before the red light comes on, we're all being quiet in anticipation of talking to you guys. So hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite Average to Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Tony Meola, and this is the last day. We're starting here. This is the last day where you can vote for us. We need your help. Our community, get over there. Today's the deadline to vote in the 2025 Sports Podcasts Awards. If you love what we're doing here, then please take a minute or less to vote for us. The link is in the description. You can hit the QR code above Chuck's shoulder. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can access this. Go make it happen. It would mean a lot to us. You have till midnight tonight. So if you're listening later, there's no excuse. You got to do it. All right, before we get into the weekend recap for Americans abroad, lots to talk about there. Before we get into Weston McKennie, the guy can play multiple positions. Before we get into a whole bunch of other stuff, like always, I want to know, Big Tones, great to see you as always. How was your weekend, my friend?
It was good, my friend. I got a little golf in here in Florida.
Wow. Wait. What's your handicap? You have a handicap?
Yeah, it's handicap. I'm handicapped for sure
Oh
when I'm playing. I'm getting there, though. I'm getting to a point I really like, Jimmy. So any invites to play, I'll travel with the club. Watched a lot of games. Didn't quite like what I saw from I liked what I saw from my Milan, but didn't like the result. A couple Americans got back on the field. I know we'll get to those. So it was a good weekend, my friend.
Yeah, well, speaking of golf, well, they call me the snowman because all I do is get eights. You know, that's just what I do. Chuck, how about you? How was your weekend? Did your team play? How are your little guys doing?
Yeah, coached. We had a big training on Friday, elite development training program, and then 2 games on Saturday, or 1 game on Saturday. 1 game got canceled, and then lacrosse on Sunday. So, yeah, your boy was out there active coaching. I really enjoy seeing these kids thrive and make mistakes too, because that's part of learning. So they look at me when they make mistakes. I'm like, good. That's what you're supposed to do. Keep going, learn from it. So it's awesome.
I love it. Charlie Davies out there brainwashing America's youth about the beautiful game. We appreciate you, Chuck. All right, let's get into
you, Jimmy. No, what about you? What'd you do?
Oh, I just got back. Well, I appreciate that. I just got back from the NSCAA Coaches Convention. I was there with Quick Goal on Thursday's podcast. I had just landed, and it was fun. It was great. You guys have been there before. I will say shout out to everybody because I feel like there's a record that's being set every time a coaches convention is being held because the amount of people wearing tracksuits is next level. It must be a Guinness World Record for the amount of tracksuits in one place at one given time, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun that you can be like, oh hey, there's a talk going on with Emma Hayes, and then right across the hall there's a session being held where they're breaking down how to get into the attacking third in a meaningful way. And then, oh, hey, by the way, there's some people that are trying to help grow the game in this area. And I love being there. It's incredible. And in some ways it's so overwhelming. You're just having these great conversations and you're around a lot of like-minded people. So it's a thrill. And this is a really long way of me saying that we need to be there next year. Call it what you want. It needs to be on location, talking and being amongst the people. But I had a great time. Anybody that came up and said hi and they love the podcast, we really appreciate your support, and yeah, a lot of fun was had, like always. And then I ran into Mike McGee, Stu Holden, Kyle Martino. We maybe went out and enjoyed some adult beverages, and those are some very fun conversations. So shout out to those guys and everybody else that I saw when I was there. All right, Americans abroad. Let's get into our weekend recap. Here's some notable results. We're going to talk Paxten Aaronson first. He scored the winning goal against Feyenoord. Utrecht, currently 3rd in the Eredivisie. What is going on? The first time they've won away home at Feyenoord since 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Tyler Adams, probably my favorite, played 89 minutes, pretty much a full game in Bournemouth's 5-1 win over West Brom in the FA Cup. Matt Turner got a clean sheet. He got the start, Big Tones. I'm going to ask you about that in a second. Really big save for Crystal Palace, 1-0 win versus Stockport in the FA Cup. James Sands makes his debut for St. Pauli in the Bundesliga, coming off the bench. 1-0 defeat versus Eintracht, unfortunately. Last time you played a Bundesliga club, fun fact, was with Rangers in the Europa League final. They also lost to Eintracht. That sucks. He just got to get away from Eintracht Frankfurt, James Sands. Josh Sargent returns from injury, comes off the bench. Game was already out of reach, 4-0 defeat versus Brighton in the FA Cup, but nice to see him back. I'm coming to you first, Tones. Let's talk about Matt Turner. Gets the start for Oliver Glasner, makes a hell of a save. Really the only piece of work he had to do, he had to stay alert. Obviously, Crystal Palace are going to drive that game, so it's even harder, I would say, to remain as focused as you need to be, because you probably only have to make 1 or 2 saves throughout 90 minutes. How did you think he performed?
Yeah, really good. I think you're talking about the save in the second half down to his left, right, which he pushed away, and that's a really difficult save. And Matt, we've gone through this, almost ad nauseum, right, of how he needs to get in a better position. Hasn't started since I think it's October 30th was his last start, right? So it's not been ideal. The move hasn't been ideal, but he needs to take advantage of these moments. At the moment, he's still the number 1 goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team in my mind, and that's kind of weird to say that our national team goalkeeper's not playing. But I suppose give him credit, right? Because the easiest thing is, you can have a bad game and you go, well, of course you're going to have a bad game. You're not playing, and he's in a close game against a team that they should clearly beat, but he has to come up with a big save, and credit to him because he got the job done. Again, not ideal, but he took advantage of the moment. And the only thing you can do in those positions, and look, we saw Ethan Horvath, right? Isn't he coming off a man of the match performance recently as well? You can only give your manager something to think about in these positions, and at least maybe if you don't think about making a change, what you do is give your manager, and it doesn't matter if you're a goalkeeper or Gio Reyna playing 12 minutes or whoever it is, you just give your manager the faith that, okay, if I need this guy, I can count on him, right? So that's kind of what the performance does for Matt Turner.
Well, let's see if it changes anything. I'm excited to see how Matt Turner does. I want to get into Chris Richards because he ended up playing in the middle of a back 3. However, I want to tap the brakes on that. We'll get into a center back talk here because I want to go to resident attacking superstar Charlie Davies, getting his thoughts about Paxten Aaronson, because he has been one of their best players this season, and they're having one of their best ever seasons in a long time. And he impressed at the Olympics. And I want to know if you think that he has the opportunity to potentially break into the national team, and maybe not for the Nations League, but perhaps for the Gold Cup, because it looks like Weston McKennie, Tim Weah, and Gio Reyna will most likely be out due to the Club World Cup. So do you think there's room for him? He's got 5 goals and 2 assists this season. Just scored the game winner, as we mentioned, against Feyenoord. Now with Sebastian Haller back in with Utrecht, which I think is an incredible signing. The 30-year-old is on loan from Borussia Dortmund, and he was the one that had some very good hold-up play to start up that to get to the second goal that Paxten Aaronson ended up scoring. Different, obviously, than his brother, but got a good engine and playing a little bit deeper, and that might be a spot where we could use some of his juice. Your thoughts?
Well, in terms of Paxten Aaronson performing at Utrecht this season, it's been phenomenal. I think that's been the biggest surprise of when you're looking at Americans abroad, because I don't think there was much expectation, not only with him, but also the club. And here they are competing for a European spot in the Eredivisie. And he makes such great runs on midfield. I think the timing of his runs are very good. And then you could see that when he gets in the final third, I've always thought he strikes the ball a little bit better than Brendan. And so I think he, for that reason, is a little bit better of a goal scorer. Whereas I think the runs, naturally, both of them are very good. They're both active, but maybe Brendan is a little bit better with his runs. But in terms of the ball at their feet, I think Paxten may be a little bit better. And so when you're talking about fitting into the U.S. men's national team, I think it's going to be really difficult, Jimmy, even if he's playing at his best, because that's where we're the deepest. And we're talking about Tyler Adams, Tessman, McKennie, Busio, Luca Della Torre, Cardoso, Aiden Morris, and then it's Paxten, right? And that's if everyone's fit and healthy. So I think he's in a tough spot because of the position that he plays and the depth in that position. But he is supremely talented, and I'm really happy for him, as well as Brennan, both getting a lot of playing time. But it may come down to the World Cup where the brothers are fighting for one spot in terms of, because they can be in a position where they can play multiple positions in midfield, and we've seen Paxten play more advanced with the Olympic team in one of those winger positions, but it is, I think it's just a really difficult position to be when there's so many skilled players that are young in your position.
Yeah, I wonder then how he can break into the team. To your point before, Big Tones, you can only give something the coach to think about, right? So if you're making big plays and big games and big moments and you show that you can consistently do that, that makes a difference. I mean, that's why Malik Tillman has gotten onto our radar in a meaningful way. I didn't think he played great, Malik Tillman, this past weekend against Asad Alkmaar, ended up getting subbed off. And then the guy that came in for him, Gustil, ended up having an assist like a minute later. So just one of those. That's how it goes at times. That's the game. But he's been consistently good. So now we talk about him in a more meaningful way. So I think Paxten needs to continue to do that. And if Utrecht can maintain their status and start to continue to clip the heels of Ajax and PSV, who are above them, and hold off Feyenoord, who are in fourth right behind them, then you're talking about somebody who's being a key contributor in a meaningful way. So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Jim. I thought you're done. I mean, we're calling this is a successful loan, right, for Paxten Aaronson. He's still on loan right now, and this is what a loan is supposed to be. We've seen other loans with Gio Reyna and with Matt Turner. This is what you're supposed to do. When you leave your club, you go to a club that you're going to play, you're going to develop, you're going to get better all the time. Going on a loan and sitting is clearly not ideal, right? So this is what a loan is supposed to look like. This is like the ideal scenario where you're playing. And now in this case, playing in a league where you're trying to get your team to Champions League, right? You're not even at a team that's at the bottom of the table. So this has been a huge success for Paxten. I just want to go to Charlie, though. Charlie, you don't really want to see the 23rd man come down to two brothers, do you? You don't really want to see.
Hell no! Imagine that.
You don't want to see that. Like, that's torture, man.
Thanksgiving.
You don't want to see that.
Hey, how was the World Cup? Yeah. All right. Don't talk to me. You're dead to me.
Yeah,
that would be pretty heartbreaking.
At that point, you either got to take them both, or you got to leave them both off.
Yeah.
Man. There's no way you can do that, man. No way.
I hadn't really thought that through a little bit, but interesting dinner conversations potentially in the future for the Aaronson family. All right, let's talk. There's a lot of players to talk about. Actually, just because I mentioned the PSV AZ Alkmaar game, that was 2-2 at finish. So Ajax ended up winning. The lead at the top for PSV at the top there to VC, 4 points. Malik Tillman, not his best performance. I thought Ledezma was pretty good. Guy cleared one off the line. He ended up creating some good opportunities going forward and getting shots off goal from distance.
Jimmy,
maybe could have done a little bit better on Azad's first goal defensively.
Can I stop you there, Jimmy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Knowing that Richy Ledezma is being courted by Mexico and Club America, right? It feels like he's done enough to warrant a call up to the U.S. men's national team. Am I wrong? Like, who would you put if you had an option, one space, Paxten Aaronson or Ledezma right now? Who gets that spot? Knowing kind of the positions right now with the U.S. men's national team and where guys are, who do you think has a better chance to adapt and get the opportunity?
It feels a little bit now or never for Ledezma, because once Serginho Dest, for both club and country, because once Serginho Dest gets back and gets healthy, I don't know how much he's going to be playing for PSV. And then that would obviously limit his visibility and his capability for Mauricio Pochettino and in this country. So, yeah, I mean, but I agree with you. We have more depth in that particular area. And if we want to see Ledezma, and if we're really starting to think more about that attacking prowess going up the right side, and Ledezma not really a right back by trade, it could be a
think of balance, though.
Happen. So that would be more of a potential Gold Cup selection, all things considered. But I would assume, Big Tones, that Serginho Dest will be back by then, and that's another one where we got these really good guys that are on the precipice, but they just can't find their way into the first team.
I guess my question would be: is there anyone that's currently there that Ledezma? Let's take January camp out, right? Because that is irrelevant to Ledezma, right? Based on where he's playing. Like, who does he replace? And I'm assuming we're talking about him as an outside back, whether it be a left back or a right back, that's where we're going to bring him in, not in the midfield, which is his natural position. So that's always the question I ask. Whenever anyone says, like Paxten Aaronson, bring Paxten Aaronson, then Charlie rattles off a bunch of names, and you're like, well, maybe he doesn't fit in that group right now, because you know what I mean? Because it's so easy to go, so-and-so scored some goals and let's bring him in a national team camp. I love Richy Ledezma. Had him as a youth player from when he was 14 years old in the youth national teams. Listen, Mexico is going to court every player that potentially will be a part, can be a part of their program. We know that. We've seen this story. You're not going to win every one of those battles. I just think sometimes we look at these things kind of too week-to-week basis, But Ledezma, Jimmy, I think you bring up the point about the Gold Cup. I would think that's like a perfect opportunity to bring him in. Does he last that long, right? If Mexico's really courting him, do they say, okay, we're going to bring you up for whatever, Nations League or whatever it is, and then you make a choice? Who knows? But I think, right back would be the one position for him that he would have the best chance to get a look at.
I want to call out some of the comments here. Z Diddy. Dest is 100 miles clear of the next right back on the pitch. Jedi is 100 miles clear of the next left back. Moving on. Yes, that may be the case, but we also have to take into account depth and injuries and suspension. So that next left back or that next right back, even though they're 100 miles clear, they better be up for the task, and you better have the right guy who can handle the pressure, who can handle the situation, who can adjust depending on the tactics or the situation. And I go back to Mauricio Pochettino and the way that he's played so far, and the inverted, position of Anthony Robinson coming into midfield, who I don't think any of us saw that. So him, underlapping Timothy Weah on the left side as well, not seeing Timothy Weah as a left winger. So if you're taking that into account, there may be in a world where maybe the right back is doing that and not so much Anthony Robinson. He's playing straight up left, and Scally, as well as he's done defensively, doesn't give you much offensively. And so maybe the team that we're playing, the left side's weak. And so the right side has to be the attacking option for the U.S. men's national team. And therefore, maybe you're switching who that right back is. And now Scally is is out, and you're playing an attacking right back, and Anthony's tucking in more. So I think just being flexible, you have to think about the next guy.
I think what's interesting, if I start to strip away some of the things that we've seen from Pochettino so far, maybe not strip away. I mean, it's probably not the right way to say it. But if we kind of look at it, he's trying Anthony Robinson. That really sparked something for me when you just mentioned that, Charlie, where he's putting him on the inside. He's putting Timo Weah on the left. He's having Anthony underlap. He's having Scally play a little bit more like a center back than an out-and-out outside back. He's trying all these little things. And so I guess the strip away part comes to this. One, Mauricio Pochettino's coaching staff are working these guys' asses off, right? He's trying to determine who's willing to do those little details, who's willing to run that extra yard. He's testing their grit and their personalities, and can they cope with some adversity, some physical adversity, some mental, emotional adversity. Okay, great, cool. If we get into some games, you continue to get tested. Then he's tinkering a little bit, right? Moose is wide, all these little things, all the other player position stuff that we mentioned. He's asking Christian to maybe drop centrally a little bit deeper to create overloads in the middle, whatever it may be. I think he's trying to determine who are my best soccer players. If I can put you out wide left, can you still play soccer, right? Does it throw you off that I'm not in my best position and this is not where I want to be? I mean, there's all these little.
So you're basically describing Weston is essentially what you're doing, because Weston, my man's playing left back, he's playing center back, he's playing D mid, he's playing wing, and he can have an impact no matter where the hell he is on the pitch, and he doesn't complain. Even though we all know he doesn't want to play left back. Who in the hell wants to play left back when you're a midfielder? When you're a central midfielder as well.
But better to play than not play, right?
And that's why his mouth is shut, and that's why he's doing his job.
Aren't you interested, Jimmy? Sorry, aren't you interested? I mean, we said this from the last camp, like where Serginho Dest is going to play in this mix. Like, Musa, keep in mind, Musa, it looks like he's going to get a run. I said this the other day too. Look out for Musa. Does he get the start? Is he going to start getting a run at this central midfield spot for Conceição, which I think is his best position, a little bit deeper in the middle of the field, right? So now he was playing in that right position. So do you put Dest out there in that position if you're going to play that way, of course, for Pochettino? And I think I didn't think about it the way you just put it, I should say. Let's get our best 11 guys on the field, because that's a little bit old school, right? Because everybody has become so, you're a right back and you become the best right back you can be, and you're a center back, like now we've got some guys that could mix things up a little bit. So I think Sergiño Dest, of course, we're all doing this assuming that Sergiño Dest in January, whenever he comes back, he's going to be like at 100 miles an hour again, which we don't know. We don't know how long it's going to take for him to get ready. But we're thinking by March he will be ready and he'll be in Pochettino's camp, and then we'll find out. I think that's kind of the start of the dominoes where he uses Sergiño Dest.
It's almost like straight out of Bruce Arena's playbook, right? Just get the best 11 on the pitch and we'll figure it out. And I think that is the right play in the sense of, as long as the balance isn't off and everyone understands, okay, if one guy is out of position, where do we fall back on? What's the plan? If everyone has their identity on point, then that's what you got to do. And I am with you, Tony. Yunus Musa should be central. He's not a winger. He's not going to beat you 1v1 and stretch the line. I think he's very good at keeping possession and getting out of trouble. Therefore, then it opens up space for Christian Pulisic in front of him, or Timothy Weah, or whoever. But think about the competition for those places in midfield. Now that if you do that, if Sergiño Dest is now a right winger.
All right. Balance is key. That was my big takeaway there from Chuck's last statement. We got to find it. And that's ultimately up to Mauricio Pochettino to help us figure that out. And obviously that's what he's trying to do. That's what he got hired to do. All right, we're taking our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to dig into Weston McKennie a little bit. What is his best position and how does he fit in? And then we'll get into our center back chat like I promised. Don't go anywhere.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Conrad Dino alongside Chuck Wagon and Big Tones. And we are getting into what I consider to be a very average to good conversation around Weston McKennie. And the question and the topic that our producers wanted us to explore is Weston McKennie being wasted at Juventus. That seems a smidge dramatic, but he's not playing in his best position, as we mentioned. And I want to get into him because we started to have that conversation on the other side or earlier. Tones, I'm coming to you first because I know you are a Milanista. You support AC Milan, but obviously you care about Serie A and what Juve is doing, especially with our American players. Tim Weah got off the bench in the last game against Torino, but Weston McKennie started at left back. Is Thiago Motta, the coach, getting the most out of Weston McKennie? We're speaking about balance. Is his team balanced enough to not only get the most out of his team, but also Weston in particular?
Well, this is benefiting Juventus more than it's benefiting Weston McKennie. It's not his best position. You go back 2 games ago, not the semifinal against Milan, but the Fiorentina match that they played, and Dodo turned him. He's not a 1v1 defender. He's not a guy that you isolate on the outside and go, okay, he's going to win his battle. And Dodo just, spun him and turned the corner 2 or 3 times. And we were in that. I was up at CBS, and we were in that room just watching games. We're like, this is not great. What he's great at is anticipating a pass and jumping in front of a defender and starting an attack. What he gives Juventus is a guy who can pass the ball out of the left back position. He'll get forward all the time whenever he sees the opportunity, like he's got an engine to run. But we have the interview that we saw during Champions League on the big desk where, he clearly says, this is my favorite position is in the midfield. This is where I can get my energy out. So this, Jimmy, is benefiting Juventus more than it's benefiting Weston McKennie. Now, if you're Mauricio Pochettino, do you now think about Weston McKennie and go, look, I knew he was versatile, but if I ever get in trouble in a game, at least I know I can put him at left back for a period of time. He's not a left back, but I know I could use him there, which makes him even more valuable to a national team coach. But if you're asking me, are we getting the best out of McKennie left back? The answer is no.
Okay, so really quick on Juve, Chuck. 19 games in Serie A, right? Just in the league, just in the domestic league. They have 7 wins, which is pretty wild when you think about it. Now, they haven't lost any games either. So you could flip it and say 19 games, the only undefeated team left in Serie A. This squad has 12 draws. So I don't know if they're trying to be invincible and not lose a game. They're in 5th right now, despite being undefeated, which is pretty wild. 12 draws is incredible. And I think that Weston has done a good job of putting them in that spot. What I do appreciate about Thiago Motta's side and how they've only lost twice in all competitions this season. So there's some type of mentality that's being put in place, but it feels more conservative than swashbuckling, play on the front foot type stuff. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on how Weston fits into that, and then how that maybe translates into what Pochettino's trying to do with the U.S.
I think Tony was spot on with Juve getting the most out of Weston, because they have a positional need, and Weston can play that without having to go in the transfer market, without having to panic or play a center back out of position in that spot, because he can do a good enough job that allows Thiago Motta to bring on maybe more of an attacking player. But the thing for me is they're still underperforming. This has not, I know they're unbeaten, and it's kind of crazy to say, but they're not performing in the way that you would expect under Thiago Motta, the way that Bologna were playing last year. The reason why they went and got Thiago Motta is because they were an attacking team. They were creating a lot of chances. They were scoring goals. This team, and still the same issue with Vlahovic, not getting enough goals and the production, and it's crazy to hear him linked with clubs that are even bigger than Juve at the moment, because if he's not scoring for Juve, what makes you think he's going to score for all these other clubs? I heard he's linked to Arsenal as of late. I'm like, you guys crazy? But ultimately, Juve just haven't been dynamic, and you would think they have young players, but it's not happening. And that falls on Thiago Motta. And for Weston McKennie, he's just being a good soldier, because ultimately it's either you're flexible and you say, I will do whatever you want, coach, or you say, I'm only playing my position, and you don't play. So I think this just shows growth in his maturity as well, because he probably wouldn't have said, hey, I'll play left back, way completely out of position, but he's figuring out a way to still have success because his IQ is so high. And I love that about Weston, is that we've always known he's bubbly and he's got a great personality. Everyone loves him. He attracts those people to him, but can you take that and harness it and bring it onto the pitch and grow as a player? And I think we've seen him grow as a player and a person on and off the pitch. And I'm proud of him, because it's not easy to say, hey, guys, I know, and everyone respects it too, because everyone knows he's not a left back, but to go out there and do it every week and have it not be like a one substitution role where you do it just for the best of the team. He's literally doing it because no one else can do it. And it sucks, but ultimately he's doing the best he can.
No,
Can't you
great.
see the conversation, Jim? Can you see the conversation with Weston and Motta going, hey, Weston, I know it's not your spot, but I need you at left back. And Weston just going, yeah, man, I'll do whatever is good for the team.
Right.
I mean, that's how I see the conversation going. He knows it's not his best spot.
No. And I think he's, when you think about the circumstances, I think he's done pretty well. Yeah, of course. There's going to be moments where he gets isolated. He's probably like, yeah, sweet, I didn't sign up for this when I got some fast winger running at me, or
hell no.
He's like, I didn't sign up for this. Can I go back into the midfield where I can kind of jump on passes like you were saying, Tones? I think that's one of his gifts for sure. He's always looking to start the attack, right, to win the ball and go. And I love that about his mentality. And we'll get into where he fits the best. But I just want to finish up because Juve's in it. They got away to Atalanta. They got home to Milan. They got Club Brugge in the Champions League away, Napoli away, Benfica at home, and then Empoli at home. And these are that is a schedule. And we'll see.
Imagine just from Weston's perspective, you're sitting there on a counter having to defend, Leao or CDK or Lukman, running at you full speed. You're just going, here we go. I'm getting a yellow.
Exactly right. How many yellows can I get in one game? All right. So I guess the big question then is his versatility a blessing or a curse for him? Because he can play so many positions. And what I do think where it's a blessing is that you can be trusted. And that is so key as a coach, that you can look at someone like Weston, to your point, Tones, and be like, I trust you to do this. I know it's at your best spot, but I know you can go out there and give us a good shift and hopefully help us get some points and win some games. So I like that about him. When I think about how that versatility plays into the U.S., it gets a little trickier because we have a couple guys that can play multiple positions. Yunus Musa is another one. Tim Weah is another one. Serginho Dest can play multiple. Anthony Robinson being asked to come inside. I mean, these guys can just play multiple positions, which is great. Christian obviously can play a variety of the attacking spot. It's awesome, but also at some point we have to define their roles a little bit too, right? So it's a
blurse.
It's a blurse.
That's sitting on the fence, Charlie.
I love that with your blurs. I appreciate that. So for me, if Tyler Adams is healthy, Weston is his best. I think he's the best option for us right off of his shoulder, because that would give him, when you have someone like Tyler who can cover so much ground, I believe that gives Weston the freedom to take some risks when he does press or when he does want to join the attack or whatever it may be, because Tyler's like, yeah, I got you. It's no problem. I can cover ground for 3 players. If Tyler's not in there, then I think it becomes he's just got to stay home a little bit more, and I don't think that's playing to his strengths. That's my 2 cents on kind of where he potentially fits in a perfect world situation. But I actually want to have this part of the conversation. And Tones, I want to come to you first, given your history with the U.S. men's national team. Do you think Weston is the most versatile player that we've had in on the men's side of the game? Where and is there someone you can reference from your era that
well, Timothy Weah has played left back for a full season.
Yeah, I was trying to think, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to think.
Team, I can't think of anyone in a U.S. uniform that played more positions for the U.S. Like Peter Vermes started his career as a center forward, ended up being a center back. Thomas Dooley was really versatile, played on both sides. Claudio Reyna, right, played in the World Cup as a right-sided midfielder. I don't know that's as extreme as what Weston is doing, but that was fairly versatile. That's how Bruce used them a bunch of times. Jimmy, off the top of my head, man, Beasley. Bees is the one. He's the one, but he hasn't played as many. Yeah, hasn't played as many positions, I don't think, as West has. Has he? But
no, and it's all on the left side. I mean, for the most part, he's been left wing, left back, channel, right? Maybe right wing a couple times, but for the most part, yeah.
I thought maybe Landon could play a variety of positions. Not to say that he did, but he could. Clint Dempsey's another one. You could put him as a 9. You could put him as a second striker. You could put him out wide. He could do the job. Those are the 2 guys that jumped out at me that were a little bit more versatile, and you could build them into a starting 11 in different ways. Landon and Clint, not a big surprise there. But I was trying to think about the Confederations Cup team in 2009. Charlie, was there anybody in that group?
No, but Dalton Harris is class. Right back playing 9. I was a right back playing 9. He says, that's a good one.
Didn't even trigger him. Just
I just had to laugh. That was a good one. He had the bait on this big fishing rod. He was going for a whale. You're not getting one there. We really didn't have. I look back at our time, right? It was pretty straightforward formations, tactics. It was 4-4-2 or it was a 4-3-3. You didn't really see anyone playing multiple. Like you had your spot. You knew you were a striker, or you knew you were outside mid, and there wasn't really much flexibility. We saw
Mo Adu played center back with the Olympic team.
Yeah, but that was just a one-off thing, and we all knew he was better at center back than he was as a defensive midfielder. But
listen, he should have played center back.
He should have played center back, but he just every bone in his body was like, no, I am gifted enough to be a starting midfielder.
What are you saying about center backs? We're not gifted enough.
No, but you know,
all right, I'm out.
He was one of those players that came, you know, at the wrong time when you had, you know, Michael Bradley, who had a position locked in midfield, and then you throw in Jermaine Jones, and all of a sudden it's like mission impossible to get into that midfield, where if he was a center back, he would have been elite playing out of the back with his feet as a center back and reading the game because he had a high IQ. It was probably one of the most underrated players I've ever played with.
Frankie Haydick erasure, by the way. He had Louis Figo in his back pocket in the 2002 World Cup. I think he was playing on the left side. He could play on the right side. He could play high. He could play all over the place. Shout out to Frankie Haydick. We don't give him his flowers as much as we should. All right. I promised a center back conversation. Let's talk about it. I kind of want it with you guys, with your help and everybody watching in real time. What is who's leading the race to start the Nations League, CONCACAF Nations League finals, semifinals, finals in March? We got Chris Richards, who has started 4 of the last 5 games for Palace, coming back from injury. He played in the middle of a back 3 against Stockport this weekend in front of Matt Turner. There was one little hiccup between him and Mark Yehi, which ended up leading to that good save by Matt Turner, where he didn't step to the ball, didn't see the guy over his right shoulder till it was too late. These are a little blips, but it was nice to see him playing in the middle. Usually he's playing on the left or right side of someone in the middle in the back 3 for Oliver Glasner. You have Mark McKenzie, who lost 2-1 this past weekend to Strasbourg. He played on the right side. Now, Mark McKenzie, kind of inadvertently part of 3 significant plays in this game. One, he made a back pass to his goalkeeper. Goalkeeper slipped. It's not Mark McKenzie's fault. I thought he made the right decision. Goalkeeper slips coming out. The guy wins it and walks it in. The next play, they're in a high press situation. He slips out on the sideline. They play through that pressure. And then 3 or 4 passes later, it's in the goal. Maybe if I'm nitpicking this guy, maybe his recovery could have been a little bit quicker or a little bit more like oh shit moment, right? You got to hit that next gear. I didn't see that when you watch the replay in particular. He could have I don't think it makes any difference in terms of who scores, but just that kind of extra if I'm nitpicking. And then they had a chance to make it 2-2 Toulouse, and they score, and Mark McKenzie just happens to be kind of impeding the goalkeeper, so they called it back. I thought it was kind of weak sauce, maybe. I don't know, but unfortunate that he was part of those 3. Now, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Austin Trusty started this weekend against Ross County away from home. I don't know if you guys saw this game. That field is awful. God, that's just terrible playing conditions. They end up winning 4-1. It was 1-1 for a while. And then they pulled away there at the very end. Not the sternest test. I don't think they're being challenged, let's say, for soccer acumen per se. But in terms of grit and getting plays and making stuff happen, you still got to go out there and play. You got to play whoever's in front of you. Joe Scally played for the first 80-some minutes against Bayern Munich. He was pretty solid throughout, even though Mönchengladbach had sat back for most of the game and their 1-0 loss to Bayern. When Kingsley Coman came on, he ate up Joe Scally a few times, and it's tough if you're out there defending the whole time.
Too many people that he doesn't eat up.
That's true. That's fair. I'm just saying
he's an absolute monster.
He got beat by Coman. That gets across, ends up leading to the penalty. Harry Kane buries it, and it's tough. What are you gonna do? But so that's pretty much it. So I wonder, out of those that we just talked about, we'll leave. We don't know how January camp's going to go, so we'll leave Ream and other options out for now. But just out of these players that I've noted, Chuck, I'll come to you first. Chris Richards, Mark McKenzie, CCV, Austin Trusty, Joe Scally. Of those 5, what's your pecking order? Like, who do you think has the best chance to start in the Nations League?
I think Richards is one. When he's playing consistently and he's in good form and rhythm, I think he's number 1 in terms of that pool. I'd probably go McKenzie too, because I think his athleticism really helps him out. And he's still growing. He hasn't plateaued. Whereas like Cameron Carter-Vickers is solid, but he's plateaued in my mind. You know, like he's reached his potential and he is who he is. And I love that he's tough and he's organized and he, you know, is really consistent. But, you know, the last time we saw him play just before Copa America, he struggled, right? So I really like the way that Mark McKenzie has grown into a center back. So it's 1, 2, Vickers 3, Trusty 4.
And Scally 5? Or where's Scally for you?
As a center back, yeah, Scally's 5.
Okay.
As a center
back. All right.
But,
Big Tones, I'm going to go to you, and then as resident center back, I will chime in on who I think. Your thoughts?
I put Richards first, but I still want to see him have good performances with the U.S. team. Like, I just need him to be a little bit more solid. I think Mark McKenzie's been outstanding, and as Charlie says, the direction's going like this, for Mark McKenzie. He continues to get better, and he'll continue to get better. He hasn't peaked. We said we're leaving Ream out, right, for this camp. Is that what we said? We're leaving him.
I'm just
right.
Him out. Him and
Miles.
European-based center back.
Cameron Carter-Vickers, I can't get Copa America out of my head. It's my problem. Like, I just can't get out of my head, like, his performances. And I watch their league. I try and watch that Scottish league. It's so hard to judge because, if I'm being honest, some of the teams are so bad, man, to watch. Yeah. I would prefer to see him in England or someplace else. And look, they're in a great situation. Celtics, a massive club, all that stuff. It's hard for me to judge based on what I see on the weekends. And what I look at this, who's getting bigger plaudits at the moment? Remember, Cameron Carter-Vickers 2 years ago was the Celtics MVP, right? But people keep talking about Trusty. Trusty's every bit the passer that Cameron Carter-Vickers is, and if not better. And he plays on the left side with left foot, which we don't have a lot of. Like, so if I'm thinking about sort of upside moving forward, like, I'm thinking more Trusty than Cameron Carter-Vickers. I feel like Cameron Carter-Vickers, like, we know who he is, right? We know the center back he is, where I feel like there's more still to come from Austin Trusty, right? And his growth and all of that. So I don't know. I would put Trusty ahead of him right now, especially given the timing, a year and a half out from the World Cup. That's kind of how I would go. Richards, I'm first with Richards. I still want to see more consistency from him. I do. I need to see it camp in and camp out. Hopefully, we're going to see a lot, I think, in Nations League of what Pochettino's thinking. Like, he's had now time to see guys, study guys, have guys in camp, see them at their club team. Like, I think we're going to get real close to Pochettino's World Cup thoughts in the Nations League. It is just my opinion.
And I'll say this, and I don't know if I've mentioned this yet in our recent podcasts, that Gold Cup roster too is going to be, I know that a couple players might not be available for the Club World Cup, but in 2005, when I had to make that Gold Cup roster, right? Because if I was going to make the 2006 World Cup, because that's your opportunity to most likely be around everybody for a month of games, camaraderie, behind the scenes.
It was different back then, Jimmy.
Training. Okay, I get it. Yeah,
significance.
Everything's different back then. I hear the same bullshit everywhere I make comments when I'm referencing my past. Okay, that's fair. It's different, but also, how is there not some opportunity for somebody to get a month run? Like, I think if you get it called in, it's better than not. Like, if you don't make that Gold Cup roster, let's say it's outside of the big names, right? Because of whatever reason, injuries, or they've got FIFA Club World Cup, then if you're not part of that Gold Cup roster, the odds of going to the 2026 World Cup, I think are pretty much done. I don't know how
basically
you're
everyone at January camp now is what you're saying. If you're not
or
included
it could be
in the Gold Cup.
You got Ledezmas, you got others that are potentially hanging around the fringes that aren't in the January camp. But if you're not part of that roster, I think you don't have any chance. So yes, I agree with you. Ultimately, the Nations League is going to be a very important sign of what that looks like, because you might not have all those players available for the Gold Cup. But if you're not part of that Gold Cup roster, I don't think you're making the 2026 World Cup team. So in saying that, my center back line, I think that I got McKenzie first. He's got the experience of actually playing under Pochettino, and I think he's locked to start in the Nations League. Obviously, without Ream involved, I would say Richards is there second. I like the Trusty argument a lot. I in terms of wanting to see more of a certain player, especially because Pochettino has a long history of knowing Cameron Carter-Vickers, having been around him with Tottenham back in the day. Then yeah, why not give Trusty a look? I do think that Scally does have an opportunity too, as well, because he's already proven that he can thrive so far under Pochettino, and that gives him an edge over some of the other guys as well. So I think the two locks for sure to start, I would say, are McKenzie and Richards. I think Scally would probably be my three. I put Trusty four, and I put CCV fifth. He hasn't performed well enough in recent U.S. men's national team performances. He's already known quantity to Pochettino. So that's what I'm going with. All right, that's it. We're going to take our next break.
I was like, wait, what?
No, I'm not ending the show. When we come back, We're going to talk a little bit about Pochettino's roster for January camp because we actually don't have Charlie's thoughts on that, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back in to Call What You Want. We're in the stretch run. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Tony, and I teased it before the break. Charlie, let's get your thoughts on this roster by Mauricio Pochettino in January camp. Any standouts for you? Anybody you're excited to see?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for all the players getting invited.
Very diplomatic of you
to represent their country in the U.S. with the U.S. Women's national team.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Keep going.
Yeah. No. I guess one player that I'm really looking forward to seeing here is Diego Luna. I mean, we've talked about him, and it feels like this is his chance to really show what he can do with Mauricio Pochettino and at this level. And of course, this is a ways off the top team, but if he can stand out, that's going to give him an opportunity to potentially get called up again in the future. And then he probably will get have a conversation with Mauricio Pochettino to say, hey, you need to move on. You need to move to Europe. It's time for you to go to a bigger club, or that conversation doesn't happen and he just continues to do what he's doing. But I'm interested to see what he looks like with this group. Brian Gutierrez is a young player. He's had some flashes with the Fire, right, Tony? This is one kid that, they say could be on the cusp of being a breakout player and going to Europe. I know, that's one of his goals. And other than that, it's kind of just hoping that they have a. Do you think, camp.
Charlie, coming right back to you, do you feel like this camp should be age capped moving forward? I'm not the right person to talk about this. I have a enormous soft spot for late bloomers. If that was the case, I never would have had the opportunities that I did.
I think it's a good topic because our producer Des called me yesterday and said, hey, do you think it should be just for young players? I said, that's what the under 23 camp is for. That's what the under 20 camp is for. That's where you go if you're a youth player and you're doing well. This is the best possible players that don't get called into the top team. And for Mauricio Pochettino, maybe he learns a lot about some of the depth. Maybe there's late bloomers. Maybe there's players that he sees quality in that maybe not necessarily that everyone else sees quality in. And you have to figure out, hey, if things go horribly wrong and I have to start because of injuries, whatever, and I have to start, digging deep into my player pool, I need to know who has experience, who I can count on, and guys who have maybe played 5-10 seasons professionally and will give him what he needs, or just in terms of training depth, or just being somebody to come in and add something to the team, add value. I'm always going to be of the mindset that this should be the best possible players get called in. And that's what the national team should always be. Not a charity, not a handing out just for the MLS futures. Like, no, this is the best players possible. Now, among the best possible players, I'm sure there'll be a couple young kids who could go to a U20 or U23, but they're standouts. So you're saying, all right, I want to bring you in and see what you look like against the best players in MLS or the best players in North America who are at this camp.
Tones, where are you on the age capped?
Yeah, that's a hard no for me. Yeah, I don't. That Charlie, I can't say any better than he just did. Right. That's why you got age denominations in the lower divisions. Well, can I add a guy in here that I think I said the other day that I'm really interested in? If you don't mind, Max Arfsten, man. I
like the way he plays. I do like the way he plays.
Man, I don't know what it is about him, and you talk about a kid who's come on like the Wilfred Nancy scene later, last 6 months of the season last year. Just keep an eye out on him. I don't know what it turns out to be, but there's something about his skill. He has a little Clint Dempsey in him when I watch him and when I look at him, and I just because like there's a little bit of an unknown. He's got enough skill to do a lot of things. He gets on the end of like there's just an intrigue about that kid. I don't know what's going to turn out to be. Luna obviously is the one guy, as Charlie said, we're all looking at. And then I'd throw the third one would be Ajiman for me. Just a different profile forward than we have in camp. He's 24 years old. He finally gets a run in Charlotte.
Cool. He's too old, Tony. I'm sorry. He's not under 20.
Yeah, he's aged out of this camp.
As well. We would never this camp. So I think we should the whole thing.
Those would be some guys to of course I look at all the goalkeepers all the time, but those would be some names I would throw in there.
No, I'm excited to see these guys too. So I'm glad they're getting the opportunity, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Now, I had an opportunity to talk to Greg Vanney, who is the winning MLS Cup champion coach for the LA Galaxy. And he, at the coaching convention, had a little session, and it was good to hear his thoughts, and obviously a ton of confidence and knowing that, which must be a great feeling, right? Where you have an idea of how you want your team to play. You go out and get players that fit that system, and it works. And you're one of the best and most consistent teams throughout the season, and then you're rewarded with that consistency with a trophy at the end. That must be an incredible feeling. So it was really cool to get his thoughts. They opened it up to a Q&A, and of course, I got to raise my hand. Well, I would be doing my due diligence and talking to one of the brightest minds here domestically if we didn't talk to Greg Vanney. So my big question for him was about creating American players, especially creative American players. When we look at the best 11 in MLS this past year, no Americans. When we look at the top 15 in goals or assists, no Americans. And so what is he and the LA Galaxy doing in particular to help make sure that we're creating creative American players instead of sometimes when you practice too much, the structure's so much, you're creating robots, and we're getting a lot of the same similar player profiles. And so he had a great answer, very diplomatic, very thoughtful, and there was nothing really earth-shattering about what he said. So I want to open it up to you guys in some ways, because it feels like it's getting harder and harder to find these types of creative players in MLS in particular. Diego Luna stands out, right? And that's why we talk about him, because he's got a little something different than what we've seen. But when we look at a list of players that fall into the goals and assist type contributions on a regular basis, it starts to thin out. And Chuck, as our resident attacker, I want you to take the lead on this conversation.
You know what? I think it starts with the coaches and the player profiles. I look at what Eddie Johnson has been doing down in South Florida.
Doing great
trying
work.
to develop different types of players, different styles, because it feels like there's been a coaching book passed around, and it's like, this is how you develop a player. Total football. They got to do A, B, C. And it gets to a point where we have a number of midfielders who are box to box and can do the same thing, or center backs. But in terms of creative strikers or number 10s or I'd say we're probably getting some good wingers too, athletic kids who can kind of do a step over two, get down the line and whip a ball in. But in terms of real creativity and unlocking, defenses and problems with the ball at your feet, dribbling out of, we're not really seeing that anymore. I remember growing up, and even when I was coming into professional football, I remember being like, there were kids my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, that you saw when the ball was at their feet, magic. It was magic. And they could create, and they were dribble, and it was so smooth and elegant. We're not seeing too many players like that. So I think it all comes from the coaching, because one, you have to direct kids at certain YouTube videos to watch Ronaldinho, to watch Zidane, to watch, the Tyrions, Henrys of the world. And then it's proper coaching. How do you inspire that? How do you coach that? There aren't too many players who have gone overseas and have experienced that, or have seen it, and it comes back and wants to work with the youth. And that's why I give a lot of credit, a shout out to Eddie Johnson, because it seems like that's his goal. His mission is to create those gems, those guys who can beat you 1v1. And that's kind of where I get my passion. I can see the game, but I want to create a lot of players who play without fear and are all excited about the things that you can do with the ball at your feet.
Yeah, problem solvers. I absolutely love that. Now, Tone,
Jim,
before I let you chime in
You
here.
open up a can of worms.
Oh,
man,
I
at the
do.
end of the
Well,
show.
Go, Tony, go. Unlock
No.
it.
Before Tones goes,
we did this already.
No. Let's throw up a list. Let's throw up a list of what we consider to be notable Americans, MLS attacking talent. Brendan
Tony's beat
Vasquez
up
now
right
back
now.
in the league, right? Caden Clark kind of stalled at Minnesota United when he was there, playing him in different positions, a little bit more defensive minded. Then he gets a little more freedom, gets a little bit farther up the field, and is rewarded with an opportunity to get into January camp. Put up some good numbers, scored some very good goals. He's only 21. Ajimong, another one that I want to see, right? He brings something a little bit different. Gutierrez, Mihailovic has gotten his opportunities. Jack McGlynn, Luna, Jordan Morris, Jesus Ferreira. These are just some notable Americans, Brian White, Vasilev, that are in January camp, but also have been in camps before. I guess the big question, and Tones, I know you're going to answer, chime in with how you're feeling in general, but there's a question I want to also add to it. And it is this. Is it MLS's responsibility to develop American players? Because if you're just trying to go out and get the best players available, I know with the academies, there's clear emphasis and motivation to make that happen. But those players aren't necessarily translated into first teams yet. So I think yet is a big word in this.
Is it MLS's responsibility to develop American players? When you say MLS, the league or the individual teams? Because I'm always of the ilk that individual
aren't they
teams,
one and the same? Aren't they?
Well, no. We're seeing if that were the case, every team would look the same.
Of course.
The teams are responsible for developing players for their team, right? The teams are responsible for winning things, bringing in the best players. My point to my frustration in the argument, that list that we just showed, there's two dribblers on that list, Diego Luna and Jordan Morris. And Jordan Morris doing it a different way from a winger's position. He'll take you on. We had this argument months ago, or not argument, this discussion months ago. My biggest hate of coaching young kids was going to tournaments and realizing we're never going to develop a dribbler because of the parents and coaches. All you hear, if you go to a tournament, just walk around the sideline, pass. I'm watching a kid, I'm dribbling at a pass. Why? He's dribbling 5 guys. Let him continue to dribble a 6th guy. Like, we're never going to develop these guys if the coaches don't allow kids to express. Do you think Charlie brings up Thierry Henry. Do you think Thierry Henry would have been Thierry Henry if every guy came to him and said, you have to pass the ball every time you get it? No. Thierry Henry is a born dribbler. Like, he's, okay, I know I'm going to the cream of the crop to make the point, but that's what you do. Like, no one told Messi what to do. Let the kids play a little bit. Let them figure it out. And Charlie, you and I had this discussion about your team. That's what you do. You let the kids, are they going to make mistakes? 100%. They're kids. They're not pros. They make mistakes. Let them play. My teams, I was never the joystick guy. Never. Do what you want. After the fact, what I will do is tell you what your other options might have been, right? But I had one rule, Jimmy, and I'll leave you with this. I had one rule from my parents. You were never allowed to talk to the player with the ball. Never. That was my rule. If you didn't, you can call my assistant coach, Doug Jensen, right now and ask him how many times I said, Doug, pick up the phone and call so-and-so from the sideline. Our rule is we don't talk to the player. That's what I did, man. I called you from the sideline if you said anything to the player with the ball. Just let him do his thing, man. We can talk about it after, but we don't do that enough here. We just
Chuck,
don't. Charlie's
imagine
right.
You're watching a youth game and you look at your phone and it's Tony Meola is calling you.
Yeah. No, my assistant coach. I couldn't do it. No, it was Doug. When Doug
stop yapping. Stop yapping. Stop yapping or you're out.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, Jimmy, you're talking too much. Hey, zip it.
Imagine.
Jimmy, you could talk all you want. You could say anything you want. Just don't talk to the kid with the ball. That's it. That was my rule.
No, that's a great rule.
I think I'm going to
figure it out.
I might have to
figure it out.
I'm going to steal that. I think I'm going to implement that.
Oh, it works so good,
all
man.
the kids on the field aren't going to talk either.
Exactly. Nobody's saying anything to
the kid on the ball is be like, no one asked for it.
Tones is calling me right now in the game. What's even happening right now? It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. All right, that's it. We're calling it a show. That's a big conversation. We'll have to get into that with a little bit more teeth and bites a little later.
Hey, why don't we get Eddie Johnson on here to talk
we
about
should.
just about
Hell yeah.
I saw a good comment being like, we don't know the long-term benefits of his training yet, right? Because he's just started over the past 3-4 years of doing this. So we don't know where these players will end up. A lot of the younger players who are coming through, but
you and I, Chuck, could both agree that he's laying an incredible foundation for these kids to go
phenomenal
on careers, right?
And inspiring a lot of other coaches because there are a lot of copycats out there. He's not afraid to let those copycats know that they're copying his stuff, but he's also proud of that because he's like, he's like, right? Hey, we need more people doing this type of stuff.
Yeah, copying's. That's a sign. That's a compliment. I agree. We gotta tell him it's a compliment. So he doesn't get too.
I think
too upset about it.
I think he's come to grips with that because he's still putting out all the stuff. So
he's so competitive. EJ, yeah, he's incredibly competitive. So I understand where he's coming from. But yeah, we should get him on. It would be fun to talk youth development with Eddie Johnson. All right, that's it. We'll call it a show. Thank you for hanging out with us. As always, we have a preview coming up for you guys. That'll be on Thursday at 6 p.m., 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Gloss America YouTube channel. Hit like and subscribe like always. Make sure you vote. This is the last time you can vote for us. Closing is tonight.
Yeah, you guys, let's go. Vote for your boys.
What you want. Best team podcast. We want to be the only average to good podcast to win a significant award. That would mean
so
a lot
we can go
to
from
us.
Average to good to great.
I don't know. I kind of want to say average to good, to be honest.
No.
Too much pressure to go to good to great. That's a lot.
Let's go good to great.
Lot. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you on Thursday. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a preview for the U.S. men's national team game against Venezuela. Boy. That should be a fun one. All right. Have a good couple days. See you soon. Later.